Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is Aditi Zumba bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to hold a virtual summit to firm up comprehensive economic partnership agreement on Friday. India calls for de-escalation in Ukraine through diplomatic channels and for concerned parties to work towards the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. Control rooms set up to assist Indian nationals in Ukraine. United States says China is failing to meet its commitments to the WTO. India warns about the developments in Afghanistan which have wider ramifications in the Central Asia region. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will embark on a 6-day visit to Germany and France on Friday. Alcaraz by Carla Simon wins the top prize at the Berlin Film Festival. And in cricket, India men's and women's teams to be in action on Friday. With the new Omicron variant of coronavirus causing concern, we appeal to our listeners to be vigilant, get fully vaccinated, and help others, including children between 15 and 18 years, to get vaccinated. Please continue to follow these 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011 23978046 and 1075. And now, the news in detail. India and the UAE will firm up a comprehensive economic partnership agreement during a virtual summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan on Friday. A report.
Building on a comprehensive strategic partnership, bilateral relations between India and the UAE have strengthened in all areas in recent years. The relations have seen frequent high-level visits between the two nations. Both sides have collaborated closely during the COVID-19 pandemic in critical areas of healthcare and food security. The UAE hosts a large India community which numbers close to 3.5 million. The Prime Minister has expressed India's appreciation to the leadership of UAE for supporting the Indian community during the pandemic. UAE leadership has also been appreciative of the contribution of the Indian community in its development. Both sides had agreed on an air bubble arrangement in 2020 during the pandemic which has enabled the movement of people between the two countries despite the challenges posed by COVID-19. Bilateral trade, investment and energy relations have remained robust. The two sides are also strengthening their cooperation in new areas of renewable energy, startups, fintech, among others. India is participating with one of the largest pavilions in the Dubai Expo 2020. India's Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar will inaugurate the Food, Agriculture and Livelihood Fortnight at the India Pavilion in Expo 2020 Dubai on Thursday. Under the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA, the economic and commercial engagement was taken to the next level. UAE is India's third largest trade partner and bilateral trade and investment ties are expected to see significant enhancements. Nishit Kumar for World News AIR.
As India and the UAE gear up for the virtual summit of the two heads of states, all eyes are now on the broad contours of the free trade agreement under the ambit of CEPA. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a commentary on the India-UAE free trade agreement by our Foreign Affairs editor, Dr. Atul Tiwari.
Free trade agreements essentially act as enablers, giving a boost to trade between the partner nations. Under FTA, two trading partners provide duty-free access to a number of goods traded between them. At the same time, they liberalize norms to enhance trade in services and give a fillip to investments. In the recent past, the slow progress and the binding norms under WTO negotiations have been a limiting factor, and nations are engaging more bilaterally through the free trade agreements. India has been engaged in free trade negotiations with UK, Canada, Australia, Israel and United Arab Emirates. With Australia, interim FTA is likely to be in place by March this year, while the first round of negotiations with UK have already been held. In case of FTA between India and UAE, substantial progress has been made, and the stage is set for a historic signing of agreement between the two sides. In addition to removing the trade barriers, the Indian side is looking at investment protection measures and special facilities for Indian labour and expatriates. The negotiations for bilateral FTA under the ambit of India-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement (CEPA) began in September 2021 with an ambitious timeline to close the deal by March 2022. Indian side was led by the Union Minister of Commerce and Industries, Mr. Piyush Goyal, and his counterpart Thani bin Ahmed Al Zayudi. In the year 2020-21, UAE was India's third largest trading partner with a bilateral trade worth $43.1 billion. Exports were valued at $16.7 billion, while imports were pegged at $26.7 billion. India's major imports from the UAE include petroleum and petroleum products, precious metals, gems and jewelry, minerals, chemicals, and wood products. UAE has also investments worth $11 billion into India since 2000 and is among the top 10 investors in the country. On the other hand, India's major exports to UAE include petroleum products, precious metals, stones, gems and jewelry, minerals, food items such as cereals, sugar, fruits and vegetables, tea, meat and seafood, textiles, engineering and machinery products. Investments by Indian entities in the UAE amounted to about $85 billion, mostly in real estate during 2020-2021. India imported $10.9 billion worth of crude oil from the UAE in 2019-2020. The UAE also has a huge Indian diaspora, nearly 3 million Indian expatriates who remit home nearly $3 billion annually. Dubai is the top most visited tourist destination for Indians. According to analysts, India is seeking a duty-free market access on a whole range of products such as gem and jewelry, textiles and garments, engineering goods, etc. At the same time, strict rules of origin may be incorporated into the CEPA to ensure UAE should not be used by the third countries to ship their products to India at a concessional import duties. It may well include value addition in UAE for products to qualify for trade concessions from India. The other expectations are for a deal in the labor-intensive sectors to ensure free movement of skilled professionals and in turn give a boost to job opportunities in both the countries. During the first half of 2021, bilateral trade reached $21 billion, a growth rate of more than 70% compared to the first 6 months of the last year. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said at a recent interaction with the industry that India's goal is to become the #1 trading partner of the UAE and that UAE is a gateway to Gulf Cooperation Council and all of Africa. The analysts see the deal as a win-win proposition for both India and UAE. The India-UAE FTA is expected to raise bilateral merchandise trade to $100 billion in 5 years from $43 billion in 2021. It also aims to more than double the bilateral services trade to $15 billion during this period. It comes at a time when UAE is seeking to more than double its non-oil trade with India to as much as $100 billion over 5 years as a part of its efforts to deepen ties with fast-growing economies beyond the Middle East. For India, the FTA is along the lines of its timelines for trade agreements with at least 3 countries, the UAE, the UK and Australia by 2022 as a part of its ambitious target of $500 billion worth of exports by the financial year 2023. Besides, UAE is the gateway to the Gulf region and Africa, a move which shows the dynamism and the far-sighted approach towards realizing this ambitious goal.
Moving on to the developing situation in Ukraine, U.S. President Joe Biden has said that the threat of a Russian invasion to Ukraine is very high. In his remarks ahead of departing to the Munich for the Munich Security Conference, Mr. Biden said that they have every indication that Russia is prepared to go into Ukraine and attack it. When asked if the diplomatic option is still open, Mr. Biden replied in affirmative. However, he said that he has no plans to call Russian President Vladimir Putin currently. However, earlier in the day, Russia said that fears of its invasion of Ukraine are hype and hysteria, and the presence of Russian troops near the border with Ukraine is part of normal processes. Russia's deputy ambassador to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, has told a news channel that if Russia was not attacked or provoked, it would not initiate war. Ukrainians defied pressure from Moscow with a national show of flag-waving unity on Thursday. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council is holding a session on the Ukraine situation. India's permanent representative to the UN ambassador, Tirumurti, urged all parties to engage through diplomatic channels and work towards implementation of the Minsk agreements.
India has been in touch with all concerned parties. It is our considered view that the issue can only be resolved through diplomatic dialogue. India's interest is in finding a solution that can provide for immediate de-escalation of tensions, taking into account the legitimate security interests of all countries and aim towards securing long-term peace and stability in the region and beyond. More than 20,000 Indian students and nationals live and study in different parts of Ukraine, including in its border areas. The well-being of Indian nationals is of priority to us. In conclusion, we reiterate our call for the peaceful resolution of the situation by sincere and sustained diplomatic efforts to ensure that concerns of all sides are amicably resolved through constructive dialogue.
The External Affairs Ministry on Thursday said India has been supportive of an immediate de-escalation of tensions between Ukraine and Russia and a resolution of the issue through sustained diplomatic dialogue. Briefing media in New Delhi this evening, Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bakshi said India welcomes efforts being undertaken for implementation of the Minsk agreements. He also said the developments in Ukraine are being monitored by the Indian embassy in the country. He said advisories have been issued and control rooms have been set up.
To evacuation, I don't think any decision on evacuation has been taken. Our embassy continues to function normally and provide services to Indian nationals in Ukraine. As the advisory said, those who are non-essential activities, perhaps we request them to leave as well as not undertake non-essential travel. But as I said, flights are operational, the embassy is normal, our embassy is in touch with the students. So I think that's how we're looking at it. We continue to monitor the situation on the ground, and we will take further steps if required, depending on how the situation evolves.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts.
The United States has said that China isn't keeping its promises to open its markets to foreign competition when it joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative accused China of failing to meet its commitments to the WTO and said that it is exploring new ways to combat aggressive Chinese trade practices causing serious harm to workers and businesses around the world. It published its annual report on Chinese compliance with the WTO rules on Wednesday, the first such assessment under President Joe Biden's administration. China said it is a firm supporter and an important contributor to the WTO. The U.S. report accused China's leadership of having no sense of a need to conform to global norms. Despite the trade war, trade between the two countries soared to over $657 last year after struggling through the pandemic, with the U.S. facing a huge trade deficit. The U.S. repeated its long-standing accusations about China's state subsidies and regulations to favor its own companies over foreign competitors and pushing tough conditions on foreign companies for access to Chinese markets. The report also noted that the U.S. is engaging with like-minded trade partners, including the ones in the Indo-Pacific region, to strengthen existing trade ties and to reduce reliance on China in key supply chains. The Baloch Students' Council has set up a 3-day protest camp in Pakistan's capital Islamabad against the enforced disappearance of fellow student Hafiz Baloch. The protest camp was set up at Islamabad Quaid-e-Azam University, Pindi Point. A large number of students participated in the camp, while the students also held a silent rally inside the university. The protesters said that the state crackdown on Baloch students and illegal disappearance of students is a violation of the constitution and human rights. Hafiz Baloch was abducted from Khuzdar on the 8th of January by security forces. Hafiz Baloch is from the Khuzdar district of Balochistan and is a final year MPhil student at the Quaid-e-Azam University in Islamabad. According to sources, residents in the Sarkanoi district of Kunar province said that the Pakistani army launched 60 to 80 rocket shelling in different parts of Kunar in the last 24 hours that destroyed many civilian residencies and wounded a civilian. The Culture and Information in charge in Kunar said that many residents of Kunar have left their house due to Pakistan's shelling. Meanwhile, many Pakistani rockets hit the Marorai district in Kunar. Pakistan's authorities have not yet commented on the issue. Meanwhile, 12 Pakistani prisoners who have completed their sentences were repatriated to Pakistan via the Atari-Wagah land border on Thursday. The External Affairs Ministry said that the government attaches the highest importance to addressing all humanitarian matters, including the early release and repatriation of Indian prisoners and fishermen. It said the government's persistent efforts have succeeded in the release and the repatriation of 20 Indian fishermen from Pakistan's custody in 2022 so far.
India has warned about the developments in Afghanistan which have wider ramifications in the Central Asia region. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, T.S. Tirumurti, drew the UN Security Council's attention towards the threat of possible growth in international terrorism and drug trafficking following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. Ambassador Tirumurti stressed that the international community needs to take cognizance of the concerns which Central Asian countries have on developments in Afghanistan. He added they have an important role in the settlement of disputes, especially in conflict situations. The Indian envoy was participating in UNSC debate on cooperation between the United Nations and the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, which consists of Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, is celebrating the 20th anniversary of its establishment. In yet another closure of a media outlet in Afghanistan, the Aina private television network belonging to the Jumbish political party led by Marshal Dostum has stopped its operations after 2 decades of telecast. According to reports, the media house shut shop due to financial problems coupled with a change in the political regime. Since the Taliban's takeover of the government in August 2021, many media outlets closed and numbers of journalists lost their jobs. Afghanistan Journalists Federation called the closure of media outlets as catastrophic.
Bangladesh Education Minister Deepu Moni has said that students who have taken 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine will be allowed to attend classes physically from the 22nd of February. Addressing the media in Dhaka on Thursday, the minister said that the decision has been taken after a discussion with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in light of the sharp decline in the infection rates in the country. Our Dhaka correspondent reports that earlier the National Technical Advisory Committee NTAC on COVID-19 held a meeting and recommended opening of educational institutions for the vaccinated students. 83% of people in Africa are yet to receive a single dose of COVID-19 vaccination. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, stating the fact, said that this is not only a moral failure, it is also an epidemiological failure which is creating the ideal conditions for new variants to emerge.
Meanwhile, the External Affairs Ministry on Thursday said India is following the developments in Canada in the context of blockades and protests going on there. Briefing media in Delhi, Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said India has noted that the Canadian government has invoked the Emergency Act. On 8th of February, Indian High Commission in Ottawa had issued an advisory asking Indian nationals there and people travelling to Canada to exercise caution and remain alert and avoid areas where demonstrations are taking place. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will leave for a 6-day visit to Germany and France on Friday. Briefing media in New Delhi this evening, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said he will participate in the Munich Scrutiny Conference during his visit. Dr. Jaishankar will also hold bilateral meetings with foreign ministers and other delegates who will attend the conference. He will also participate in a panel discussion on the Indo-Pacific. On the sidelines of the conference, the minister will lead discussions at an Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav event hosted by the Consulate General of India in Munich and the Observer Research Foundation. The Munich Security Conference is a leading forum for debates on international security policy. It provides a platform for diplomatic initiatives and approaches to address the world's most pressing security threats. In the second leg of his visit, the minister will hold bilateral meetings with his French counterpart, Jean-Yves Le Drian, at Paris on the 20th of this month.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Thursday participated in the first G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting under the G20 presidency of Indonesia. The minister will virtually join sessions during the two-day meeting to discuss current global economic issues and G20 priorities for 2022. The 17th G20 Heads of State and Government Summit will take place in November this year in Bali, Indonesia. Director Carla Simon has won the Golden Bear at the 72nd Berlin Film Festival for her second feature, Alcaraz. She received the prize from jury president M. Night Shyamalan on Wednesday. A report.
Alcaraz is a Catalan film depicting the life of family of peach farmers in a small village in Catalonia. Their lives change when the owner of their large estate dies and his lifetime heir decides to sell the land, suddenly threatening their livelihood. The film, directed by Carla Simon, stars Jodie Dolcet, Anna Otten, Berta Pippo, Xenia Rosette and Albert Bosch, among others. The Golden Bear is the highest honor awarded at the Berlin Film Festival. French film and stage actor Isabelle Huppert was awarded an honorary Golden Bear for lifetime achievement. Isabelle Huppert had been honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award at the 50th International Film Festival of India, IFFI, held in Goa in 2019. Nishit Kumar for World News, AIR.
Asia's largest tribal festival, the Medharam Jatara, commenced with a traditional fervour in the southern Indian state of Telangana on Wednesday. The first day of the festival witnessed crores of devotees and pilgrims from across length and breadth of the country. The festival began with the arrival of Saralamma onto the Medharam Gadde, or platform undertaken by the Koi tribe of Telangana. The Medharam Jatara is the second largest fair of India after the Kumbh Mela, celebrated by the second largest tribal community of Telangana, the Koya tribe, for 4 days. As the largest tribal fair in Asia, Medharam Jatara is conducted in honor of the goddesses Samakka and Saralamma. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs is proactively supporting and covering the events of the festival and ensuring the preservation and promotion of the various intriguing facets of the scheduled tribes of Telangana. Moving on to sports, in cricket, India will take on West Indies in the second T20 International at the Eden Gardens in Kolkata on Friday. The match will begin at 7 p.m. IST. India defeated the West Indies by 6 wickets in the first T20 of the 3-match series at the same venue last night. Chasing a victory target of 158 runs set by the visitors, India overhauled the target, posting 162 for the loss of 4 wickets in 18.5 overs. With this win, India have gained a 1-0 lead in the series. Elsewhere, India's women's cricket team will take on New Zealand in the third one-day international at the John Davies Oval Cup Stadium in Queenstown Friday. The match will begin at 3:30 a.m. IST. And now a report from the business world.
The Sensex fell 105 points or 0.18% to finish at 57,892, while the Nifty lost 18 points or 0.1% to settle at 17,305. Asian equity indices traded in a narrow range. South Korea's Kospi gained 0.5% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng appreciated 0.3%. Singapore's Straits Times and China's Shanghai Composite Index both added 0.1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 fell 0.8%. European share markets were down in intraday trade. Oil prices fell more than 1.5%. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $93.20 per barrel. Gaurang Dhawanlal for World News, All India Radio.
The Government of India has extended the date of NEET MDS 2022 by 4 to 6 weeks. Earlier, the exam was scheduled to be held on 6th of March. India's Health Ministry has said that it has received representations from United Doctor Front Association and MDS aspirants regarding the request to extend the date of examination. The ministry said the date of completion of compulsory rotating internship for eligibility for admission to MDS courses is now fixed on the 31st of July instead of 31st of March this year.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let's take a look at what made the headlines in Nepal. Himalayan Times writes, Nepali Congress leader Bimalendra Nidhi has expressed confidence that the federal parliament will endorse the Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact. Kathmandu Post writes that Nepali consumers expect the inflation to almost double over the next 1 year from mid-January amid elevated price pressure in recent months. And now some news from Bangladesh. Dhaka Tribune reports that Bangladesh dropped 17 positions in the Index of Economic Freedom 2022, breaking a 5-year trend of expanding economic freedom. UNB reports that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has directed the authorities to prepare a universal pension scheme for people above the age of 60. Let's take a look at the press reports on China. Business Standard writes regulatory crackdown in China has shrunk the country's share in the global tech, media and telecom IPO market by 9% last year. SCMP writes that police in eastern China's Suzhou in Jiangsu province have detained 2 people after they tried to visit a woman who had been chained and locked in a hut in freezing temperatures by her husband. CNBC reports that a Chinese industry body designed to develop the country's metaverse applications has added a new batch of companies as it pushes ahead with the latest technology craze. And now turning to Afghanistan, Bazook News writes that a former Canadian ambassador to Afghanistan has said the Afghan assets belong to the people of the war-torn country and not to the Pakistanis, and Pakistan must compensate the 9/11 victims. AP writes that fear runs through Afghanistan's hazardous media landscape. It adds that since taking power 6 months ago, the Taliban have issued directives admonishing journalists to adhere to Islamic principles when reporting. Bakhtar News Agency reports that the UNAMA has called for public access to foreign exchange reserves. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to hold a virtual summit to firm up comprehensive economic partnership agreement on Friday. India calls for de-escalation in Ukraine through diplomatic channels and for concerned parties to work towards the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. Control rooms set up to assist Indian nationals in Ukraine. United States says China is failing to meet its commitments to the WTO. India warns about the developments in Afghanistan which have wider ramifications in the Central Asia region. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will embark on a 6-day visit to Germany and France on Friday. Alcaraz by Carla Simon wins the top prize at the Berlin Film Festival. And in cricket, India men's and women's teams to be in action on Friday.
And now, before we end, let us listen to the Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from Iran.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.